Single parents in poverty, an exploration into the effects, causes, and consequences of poverty while being a single parent. Poverty and inequality is a complex issue that has been troubling millions of people across the world today. Throughout the history of the world, poverty has always been an issue for many people. There are a variety of factors that can induce poverty for people. These factors can range from a lack of income to the environment in which they were raised as a child. However, one of the biggest prevailing issues within poverty that does not get enough attention is the number of people that are living in single parent families, particularly families that are headed by single mothers. In the United States today, nearly 24 million children live in single parent families. This total, which has been rising for half a century, covers about 1 in every 3 kids across America. In the United States alone in 2021, there were over 11 million single parent families, of which nearly 80% were headed by a single mother. In America, these families become very susceptible to poverty and inequality. Due to a variety of reasons, these single mother headed families succumb to poverty and inequality more often than those living in a family structure with 2 parents. These reasons may include, but are not limited to, a lack of income due to only having one person being able to work a job in many families, a lack of education in many cases, and a lack of access to health and childcare for many families. Although this issue does not directly affect those living in a family with more than one parent, it affects society overall, and therefore affects those living in a 2-parent family as well. The issue of single-parent families being more likely to be in poverty can be very costly. Child poverty costs the U.S. economy more than $500 billion annually as a result of lost productivity, negative health and education outcomes, and increased criminal justice expenditures. In turn, if more children were not in poverty, then there would be an increased benefit to society. If children were not facing the struggle of poverty and were able to receive higher education, then they would be more likely to receive a higher paying job and contribute to society in more beneficial ways. This yearly cost to the U.S. economy, along with the benefits that society would receive as a whole from fewer children being in poverty, are 2 of the reasons why this topic should be more cared about by people and policymakers. As mentioned before, nearly 11 million families in the United States are led by single parents, and nearly 80% of these families are headed by a single mother. The U.S. Census Bureau measured that poverty rates for families with a single female head of household are over 23%, and families with a single male head of household have a poverty rate of about 11.4%. These differences in rates between gender are hard to explain. However, Karen Z. Kramer, an associate professor of human development and family studies at the University of Illinois, argues that these differences can be credited to a difference in taxable income earned by male and female heads of families. One of the main counter-arguments against using taxable income as a way to measure the differences between the poverty rates of a single mother versus a single father is that there are many outside differences that could also affect whether a family is in poverty or not. For example, the geographic location that the families live in can also be a huge determinant as to whether a family is in poverty or not. Also, the differences between age and ethnicity in these single parents can play a huge role in the effects that they have on poverty rates. The differences in age among the same genders can affect the amount of income a person receives, because an older person is less likely to be able to work long hours compared to a younger person. Also, if a person is younger and has younger children, then a majority of their time will need to be focused on their children and not just their job. Although these outside factors can discredit the measurement of using taxable income as a way to describe the differences between poverty rates between single mothers and single fathers, there is still clear evidence that single mother-headed families are more likely to be in poverty in America. Poverty in America is especially prevalent for families that are only headed by a single parent. Focusing on single mothers especially, single mother families are nearly 5 times as likely to be poor than married couple families. This can be credited to multiple reasons. One of the most obvious causes of poverty is that when a family is headed by just a single parent, whether it be a mother or father, there is usually only one source of income for that family. Although a single parent could be making enough income to support their family, there are thousands of families that fall below the poverty line because their single income is not enough to provide for their family. A single income could not be enough to support a family because the parent can either not have a full-time steady job or the quality of their job is poor and therefore they do not make enough income. When single mothers have a full-time year-round job, the poverty rate drops from 40.7% to 14%. This shows that when given a steady, full-time job, parents are able to provide for their children more, thus declining the rate of poverty within the United States. Another reason that many single-parent families face poverty is due to the poor quality of jobs that they are able to work. This can be explained as many single parents struggle to obtain an education after high school. As of 2015, just 31% of single mothers ages 25 and older held a bachelor's degree or higher, compared with 54% of comparable married mothers and 40% of comparable women overall. Due to the lack of education, many single mothers are forced to work low-paying jobs with long hours. This forces them to be at work for most of the day and does not allow them the time to spend with their children. Even when working, single mothers typically do not find high-quality jobs and are stuck working minimum wage jobs. To some people, this may seem fair, and they would argue that if a person does not have any specialized skills, then they should work a minimum wage job and in theory be able to live off that job. However, what these people fail to realize is that nearly 80% of all people working low-income jobs do not have access to paid sick days. If a single mother is working one of these low-income jobs and one of their children gets sick, a mother is then faced with either losing their income for however long their child is sick or leaving their child at home alone while they are sick. This becomes a huge dilemma for many single mothers in America. If a single mother with 2 children works a full-time job that pays $10 an hour, her family would fall below the poverty line if she were to miss 3 days of work. This becomes a very pressing issue for single mothers because when an emergency arises in their life that could cause them to miss work and fall into poverty, they are forced to choose between working or caring for their child. In order to help these families who are headed by single mothers, there needs to be more of an effort to implement programs that can help them. In 1996, a welfare reform program known as TANF was introduced to provide income assistance for poor families. This program was very beneficial at the start, but has started to fall behind recently, and especially during times of recessions. Unfortunately, the number of families with children in poverty has risen since reform, but TANF caseloads have mostly stagnated or declined. Unlike TANF, programs like SNAP, which provides food stamps for families suffering from poverty, have been able to change with recessions and the fluctuating number of people in poverty. Programs such as SNAP need to be implemented to help struggling single mothers and their families out of poverty. A program that could provide affordable housing for single mothers would be extremely beneficial and would allow parents of children in poverty to move their children into an environment with more opportunity for equal education and jobs. There are many reasons to consider the consequences of poverty within single mother families. If a child is raised in a family that is facing poverty, then they are not awarded the same opportunities as a child who is not facing poverty would be. For example, a child that is raised in a wealthier family that does not face poverty will have more access to education than one raised in poverty. Through their increased education, the child raised in a wealthier family will then go on to have the ability to earn a higher income. This creates a cycle of poverty for many people raised in low-income families, as they are not able to receive jobs that would provide them with the income needed to break the cycle of poverty. Another reason to consider the consequences of poverty within single mother families is that children living in poverty can affect everyone in society. As mentioned previously, Programs implemented to reduce poverty can be very costly. Although these programs may seem very costly, they can be very beneficial to society in the long run. If a program is implemented to increase educational equality for children living in poor communities, then these children are more likely to receive higher education. If a child receives higher education, then they are more likely to find a suitable job that can increase production in society and therefore benefit everyone. Although there are some programs such as SNAP and TANF that have been put in place to help struggling single mothers in poverty, there needs to be a push for better programs that directly help single mothers. Programs that could provide free health and childcare for working single moms would drastically benefit those struggling in poverty. These programs would allow for single mothers' children to be taken care of while they are at work. These programs would reduce the stress level put on single parents and in turn would help them to be better parents. Although these programs would seem costly to some, the benefits of helping single mothers in poverty would outweigh the cost because it would benefit society as a whole. If programs and policies were implemented to help families of single parents in poverty, it would be important to ensure that these programs and policies respect the dignity of everyone involved. It would also be very important to make sure that these programs are beneficial to helping these families in some way. Finally, these programs and policies would need to be politically feasible. If a program or policy can be agreed upon by policymakers, they must ensure that the program or policy respects the people involved while also benefiting them in some way.